Welcome back to the show. Thanks for joining me today. We're going to do a little something different. We did the leftist liberal propaganda from the corporations in the previous video about the global warming or climate change propaganda. Now we're going to tackle some of the Qanon Republican conservative propaganda today. So thanks for joining me. We're going to start out with the Organic Consumers Association, Vandana Shiva, on the taking down of the Bill Gates empire. You hear a lot about QAnon, talking about Hillary Clinton and Bill Gates, these types of people. So check out the article. Here's Vandana Shiva. She's a PhD scholar, environmental activist, food sovereignty advocate, eco-feminist, anti-globalization author, based in Delhi. Shiva is one of the leaders of the International Forum on Globalization. She is all about Vedic ecology and the ancient Vedic sciences. Punjab University, University of Western Ontario, Indian Institute of Science. I brought up one of her books here, Oneness versus the 1%. Pretty interesting person, shattering the illusions, seeding freedom. She's all about seed sovereignty, fighting against people like Monsanto. With a new epilogue, it says about Bill Gates' global agenda and how we can resist the billionaires' war on life. This is what globalization looks like: opportunism, exploitation, further centralization of power. Pretty much what I have talked about in the past about the neo-colonialism by the euphemism of modern-day economics. She's an expert whose analysis has helped us understand the situation much more deeply. A quote by Russell Brand. Widespread poverty, social unrest, economic polarization, especially in the United States, definitely, have become our lived reality as the top 1% of the world's 7 billion plus population pushes the planet and all of its people to social and ecological brink. In the Oneness versus the 1%, Vandana Shiva takes on the billionaire dictators who she calls Gates, Buffett, Mark Zuckerberg, as well as other modern empires like big tech, big pharma, big ag, all of the usual players we see on the TV, of course, because they're owned by the same people, the 1%. These people are wreaking havoc across the world, single-minded pursuit of profit, undemocratically enforced uniformity in monocultures, division, separation, monopolies, external control, finance, food, energy, information especially. That's what we're always doing around here. Healthcare, even relationships. And we got another interview here. Bill Gates is continuing the work of Monsanto, Dr. Vandana Shiva tells France 24. Our guest, Vandana Shiva, a world-famous environmental activist from India, her latest book entitled One Earth, One Humanity versus the 1%, she tells us more about her opposition to big multinationals such as Monsanto. Singles out billionaires like Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg. When Bill Gates pours money into Africa, she says, for feeding the poor and preventing famine, he's pushing the failed green revolution, talking about monoculture, GMO, high pesticide use, stuff like that. He's pushing chemicals, GMOs, pushing patterns, she tells France 24. Now we're at the New Yorker. Seeds of Doubt is the title of this one. An activist controversial crusade against genetically modified crops. Yeah, really controversial, right? A civil rights eco-feminist. You can tell what kind of slant these guys are participating in. All right, so she's talking about a purpose of a Europe trip she held was the focus of attention, the voices of those who want their agriculture to be free of poison and GMOs. Wow, pretty extreme, right? At each stop, Shiva delivered a message that she has honed for nearly 3 decades. engineering, patenting, and transforming seeds into costly packets of intellectual property. Multinational corporations such as Monsanto, with considerable assistance from the World Bank, the World Trade Organization, the United States government, philanthropies like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, as well as other governments like the United Kingdom, Australia, China, are attempting to impose food totalitarianism on the world. She describes the fight against agriculture biotechnology as a global war against a few giant seed companies on behalf of the billions of farmers who depend on what they themselves grow to survive. Amazing, right? So let's see, now we're at the insider here. Now we're going to take a look at the Q side of the propaganda. Qanon, how Bill Gates became a favorite target for right-wing conspiracy theories. So now we're just going to kind of break down the intricacies here. So I scrolled down to this insider article. What's happening in Texas was a planned attack. I think they're talking about the snowstorm. Reads a February 18 message in a popular conspiracy theorist Telegram channel with 159,000 subscribers. Holy shit. Bill Gates is attempting to block the sun in order to keep Earth more cool. Tucker Carlson dog whistled these conspiracy theorists via Fox News. So it sounds pretty crazy, right? Bill Gates attempting to block out the sun in order to keep the Earth more cool. So these guys are saying that this is a wild conspiracy theory that should be baseless. Let me see here. So I typed in Bill Gates funding, sun dimming. We got a Forbes article here. Bill Gates venture aims to spray dust into the atmosphere to block the sun. On Forbes magazine. That's not really a Alex Jones type of thing, right? And yet on the other guys, on this insider article, they say this is a crazy conspiracy theory. So let's keep going down here. First sun dimming experiment will test a way to cool Earth. Researchers plan to spray sunlight reflecting particles into the atmosphere. Nature.com. Geoengineers inch closer to sun dimming balloon tests. Science.org. Oh, Fox News, let's pass that one up. Bill Gates is thinking about dimming the sun. Popular Mechanics. Doesn't sound so far-fetched anymore when we have legitimate articles. You know, he's working with, here we go. Bill Gates funded study to dim the sunlight. Newsweek. He's working with Harvard researchers in these articles, I believe. All right, so let's go back. So it's funny how they kind of assume that it's just this far-fetched thing that could never be happening, and yet it is happening. So I scroll down to another part here. Gates warned if the world potential pandemic. Oh yeah, in a 2015 TED Talk. Yeah, so this is another conspiracy from the QAnon Alex Jones type people. Alex Jones. So he's quoted here, if anything kills over 10 million people over the next few decades, it's likely to be a highly infectious virus than a war. Gates warned the world of a potential pandemic in a 2015 TED Talk. It says conspiracy theorists use Gates' 2015 warning, a prediction public health experts made for decades, as a sign that he knew about the pandemic in advance. Well, apparently he did know about some kind of impending pandemic, as it just literally says in this sentence, the prediction public health experts made for decades. So, I go to another article here. On the Insider, Bill Gates said he warned Trump about the dangers of a pandemic in December 2016 before he took office, just before the biggest pandemic, quote-unquote, in history. So he doesn't necessarily refer to the corona pandemic, quote-unquote, in so many words, but he and many other people were apparently aware of a massive global pandemic. So this kind of going into how the propaganda is formulated. So let's see. Far-right extremists, including Qanon, began linking Gates to the virus in January 2020, the New York Times reported. A YouTube conspiracy theorist claimed Gates knew about the pandemic in advance. Alex Jones' conspiracy theorist website, InfoWars, ran an article claiming the Gates Foundation co-hosted a pandemic exercise in late 2019 that simulated a global coronavirus outbreak. It says here, in the insider piece, the foundation, largely focused on global public health issues, had participated in a 2019 event hosted by the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security that practiced preparedness for a very severe pandemic. But InfoWars was warping the truth in such a way that where these people thought that he had previous knowledge. But he did have previous knowledge, because so did these scientists. They knew that a prediction of public health experts made for decades, a looming pandemic. You see, so it is true, but it's not true. Not necessarily true in the way that Alex Jones is saying it's true. And it's also not necessarily true that in the way that this Insider Magazine article is saying that's true. It's really complicated stuff here. Stay with me, guys. All right, we're going to move on here. The Irish Times. So let's see what's going on with Bill Gates here. So the Irish Times, Bill Gates doubled his wealth to $100 billion in the last decade, gave billions away. So he's clearly making lots of money for being involved in all of these extracurricular activities. And Financial Express, Bill Gates making $200 billion from vaccine. Microsoft co-founder explains the math behind the returns because everything's being ran through the accounts of his Gates Foundation. It's not his personal accounts per se. So let's go into this one. He's a billionaire philanthropist making $200 billion from a Facebook video he was talking about. The Post read that Bill Gates admits he's making $200 billion on his vaccines. However, this is only a 26-second clip. That was an extract from a CNBC interview. Took place on January 23rd, 2019. Gates was discussing the economic upside of a $10 billion investment by his foundation. And this was all being fact-checked as if it was not real. So in the sense, it's not real because the money isn't going directly to his accounts, but the money is all involved with the Gates and Melinda Foundation. And in this previous article, it says that, yes, his personal wealth doubled. So we have his Gates Foundation wealth going up and his personal wealth going up. And so the Alex Jones people will be like, oh, well, he's profiting off of this pandemic. And he is, but indirectly. You see the difference? It's a little hard to wrap your head around here. So the $200 billion figure came from the Wall Street Journal article titled "Best Investment I've Ever Made." Gates talked about the $10 billion investment made by his foundation in global health organizations such as Gavi in India, the Global Fund, and the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. What if we had invested $10 billion in energy products? In this case, it would have returned $150 billion. So all these investments that he's been making have been having a huge return. And here we are again. CNBC, billionaire Bill Gates says this is the best investment he's ever made, going into pharmaceuticals. When I made the transition from my first career at Microsoft to my second career in philanthropy, I didn't think that my success rate would change much. Discovering a new vaccine would be just as hard as discovering the next tech unicorn. Vaccines are much harder, it turns out. Well, it doesn't sound like they're too much harder because he's making $100 billion. So now let's see where he's spending this money. Why is Gates Foundation investing in the GM giant Monsanto? Why indeed? Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation investment in Monsanto and Cargill have come under heavy criticism. I wonder whatever for. Where do you think they're operating in? Africa. So, the Wall Street Journal, Gates Foundation buys stakes in drug makers. This is another place that he's putting his money, and he's getting a very good return by investing in big pharma. Okay, now we're at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.org. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Merck company, another big pharma giant and company, and the Republic of Botswana launch a new HIV initiative. So there's quite a few of these vaccines that he's been working on and selling to governments as a kind of like a mandated product. So that's why he's getting so much money from it, because he's making all of these mandated products that are quote unquote safe and effective, like the CDC likes to tell us. So it's really interesting, the interplay between publications that are left-leaning like the Insider and publications that are right-leaning like the Alex Jones InfoWars, because they kind of play off of each other. They need each other to paint this picture for each of their respective audiences, when in reality the truth is somewhere in between. So Bill Gates, whether you love him or you hate him, he's making billions of dollars. He's a member of the 1%. He supports Monsanto. He supports companies like Merck, Pfizer, Moderna. He supports big pharma. He supports big ag. All of these corporations who are monocropping and contributing to mineral depletion in our soils, heavy pesticide inundation in our people. Bill Gates is part of all of this. And so we have people like Vandana Shiva, who is caught in the middle. She's not a Trump supporter. She's doing her own thing. She's a, anti-GMO, eco-feminist. She has nothing to do with the right-wing propaganda, and yet her argument is kind of sounds a little right-wing propaganda, right? It sounds like an American type of right-wing argument. But that's only because Americans and the West in general are functioning inside of a bubble that uses the lenses of right and leftist dogma to formulate a picture about the 1%, basically. Bill Gates, he's like a rock star for the 1%. He's making all this money. He's giving away all this money, making more money off of companies like Pfizer and Monsanto and Merck. Some of these companies, they have a terrible reputation among the people of Earth, especially in places like South America, Africa, India, So this is a fascinating topic. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We're going to do more of these videos on propaganda because it's very complex, and I love the psychology around it. So hope everybody's doing well out there. Have a great one.